Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. My name's Jane Malcolm. I'm the Executive Director of External Affairs and Corporate Affairs at the SRA. I'm not Richard Collins, as you can see. You probably heard from Richard earlier. He's got a bit of a cold, so we're trying to spare his voice. So the format for our afternoon session is that I'm going to ask Richard Williams to talk to us very expertly around better information and the transparency approach that we've just brought in, with which I'm sure you're all familiar as that became mandatory in terms of publishing material on your website last week. Then I'm going to formally introduce our panel and open it up to questions and an opportunity for you all to contribute your thinking. So I'm going to ask Richard to start us off. Thank you very much, Richard, and I think you've got a few slides for us.
A few, yes. Thank you. Let's pop that there. Okay, just looking for the slides. I'm Richard Williams. I'm a policy associate here at the SRA, and I've been working on the Better Information programme of work now for about 2 years. Now, I'm here, what I really want to talk to you about is kind of transparency, what it means for you and your firm, the benefits of doing this, and what you can do to comply. Now, just taking a step back and thinking about what Better Information is, it's really our programme of work designed to help the public and small businesses access legal services by giving them more information about you guys, the firms and solicitors we regulate, the services you offer, and helping them better understand the unique protections that come with regulated providers. But before I start, I just wanted to look at sort of consumer behaviour with this, because I think it sets a nice backdrop, and certainly Richard referred to this in the session this morning. So this is an area we've looked at quite intensively over the last couple of years, particularly with the Legal Ombudsman as well. And we've surveyed over 5,000 members of the public and 5,000 small businesses. And we found that people have an appetite to shop around for legal services. As you can see on the slide there, 71% of people spend more than 1 hour researching options, and 2/3 of people considered more than one provider. So I suppose in the way that people approach buying most services these days, they're looking at who's out there and considering a range of options that best suit their needs. And they take into account a range of factors when doing this, when spending this time. And I think it's really important to pick out here that price, whilst it is an important factor when people are choosing legal services and a legal service provider, it's not the most important factor. What really they're honing in on is reputation, quality, and those two words are kind of synonymous with solicitors and firms we regulate. But, and I know this is kind of the crux of the issue, they can't find the information that they need to help them make an informed choice. So as you can see on the slide, only 15% of people found price information they needed. And we've done our own work, and only 18% of firms we regulate publish price on their website. We regulate 10,500 firms, so you can kind of understand the scale of a lack of price information. But I think it's the impact of this that's really important. And there's two impacts. Firstly, I think small businesses and members of the public tend to think that solicitors are more expensive than they actually are. And research suggests that can be anywhere between 20 to 25% more expensive than the actual cost of a service. And because of that, they tend not to get the help that they need. And as a regulator, one of our primary objectives is to help people access legal services. So hopefully you should be all aware of what we're doing, or what we're asking you to do in some cases, to address some of these challenges. From the 6th of December, we're requiring all firms who are providing certain types of legal services to show price and service description on their website. We're asking them also to put complaints procedures on their website. That includes their own, how to complain to us at the SRA, as well as complaining to the Legal Ombudsman. We will also develop a digital badge for firms to use onto their website, and I'll come on and explain what that is shortly. And we also will launch an online register which will contain lots of information about firms and solicitors we regulate. But before I kind of drill down into those, I just wanted to kind of pick up some of the benefits of this approach. The first 2 bullet points there are really feedback we've received from firms who we've engaged with over the last couple of years and through our research. And they've told us that putting price information on their website allows them to attract new clients. They've seen growth as a result of doing it, and that might be because of people shopping around or using services for the first time. So it really is a kind of driver for growth. And secondly, it's enabled them to manage sort of client cost expectations and reduce complaints. Over 25% of complaints to the legal ombudsman are based on cost complaints. Firms that have already published price have suggested that actually those complaints have dwindled because there's a lot more clarity and expectation at the very start around what a cost might well be. And it stops solicitors and firms having those difficult conversations around price. And there's also opportunities for market differentiation, and that relates to our digital badge, and I'll come back to that in a few slides. Okay, so from the 6th of December last week, we're asking you to publish on your website clear and accessible cost information in a prominent place for certain types of legal services. Now, ideally, we'd like total cost, but if that's not possible, an average cost or a range of costs will be okay. We'd like you to include the basis for those costs, whether it's an hourly rate or fixed fees. We'd like you to include experience and qualification of anyone carrying out that work. Now, a couple of points around that. I think the key word on that first sort of bullet point is clear, is prominence. You know, we do expect this to be easily found by consumers. In terms of experience and qualification, I think you can be kind of proportionate and pragmatic with your approach. If you're from a big firm, with lots of staff working in conveyancing, it might be difficult in terms of your website to put the whole biographies up of those people. So, you can kind of put some quite high-level information as long as it's giving the consumer a sense of the quality they can expect. We'll also expect details of any disbursements, whether the services attract VAT or as well as details of services around timescales, key stages, and services that might be additional. Now, if you don't have a website, our rules will require you to make that information available on request in another format. So the slide currently shows the price areas which we've suggested are covered by our rules. We chose these primarily because these cover the most common areas of law where consumers and small businesses are looking for price information as well as the help of a solicitor. From the 6th, we also asked you to put complaints information on your website. And again, what we're asking for is for you to provide details of your complaints handling process. We'd like to see some details around how you can complain to the SRA. We'd also like to see details of how you can complain to the legal ombudsman. And again, if you don't have a website, this rule still applies to you. You'll just have to make this information available in another way on request. And this is important because research shows that actually people are less likely to raise service dissatisfaction if they can't see how it's going to be handled. If you're working with a client, have a matter with them, and they're not particularly happy, they're less likely to raise that with you because of this lack of information. Also, a fear that the outcome might well negatively impact on their particular matter. So it is important to consumers. We've made available a whole range of support to help you meet these requirements. We issued guidance and templates of best practice in October. I encourage you, if you haven't got price on your website already, to have a look at that guidance. It's there for you to use. It's been developed with practitioners and experts in this field. Use it. You might want to cut and paste various bits out there, but it's a good starting point for you. There's also Periscope sessions on our website, which we talk a little bit more about price transparency and may be able to help you answer some of the questions you may well have. If you do have any kind of queries or issues, please ring up a professional ethics helpline. They're there to help you. They've kind of all been briefed in this, and they'll be able to give you a steer on how to interpret some of these rules. And we've worked closely with the Law Society, who have also produced guidance to make sure that our messages are the same. So it might be worth you also looking at their particular guidance around this particular subject. So lots of support available for you there. I encourage you to kind of to make use of that. I wanted to talk very quickly about enforcement. Obviously, these rules came into effect on the 6th of December. We know some firms have complied already, which is fantastic. We know others are still working through the process of getting price and service information on their website. We know others haven't quite got the information up there yet because of external factors beyond their control. I think what we want to do is take quite a proportionate and fair approach to this. We recognise this is challenging for some firms. That's why we provided the guidance. So if we do receive a report that your website hasn't got this information, our first point of call will be to contact you and remind you of the rule, remind you of the guidance out there. If we receive any subsequent reports that this information isn't on your website, then that will become part of our kind of normal regulatory action. We'll take into account a range of aggravating and mitigating factors in determining the seriousness of our regulatory approach. We do take this seriously, and we've got a whole range of tools in place to monitor compliance. So we'll use our thematic reviews to check who's complying, who's not complying, rather. And we can do things like web sweeps as well. So I suppose the message for that is, if you're not quite there yet, don't worry. We're not going to come and shut you down, but we expect you to kind of get this sorted as soon as you possibly can. I want to spend a few moments now talking about the digital badge. Again, we launched this on the 6th of December. You can have the digital badge if you're not publishing price in those areas. The digital badge is for all firms we regulate and only firms we regulate. It's mandatory from spring, summer 2019. Now, for those who are not familiar with the concept of a digital badge, it's a regulated by the SRA logo that will be displayed on your website. Now, that logo will say to consumers that your firm is regulated by us, obviously. It's met our high standards, and that certain regulatory protections apply. We've worked very hard with consumers to look at the badge and the design of the badge. They can take purely from the word regulated what all of that means. So, this is quite an important piece of kind of consumer collateral that will help them understand the difference between an unregulated provider and a regulated provider. As part of our research as well, we asked consumers, what would their preference be if they saw a law firm website without a badge and with a badge, and 76% of people that we surveyed suggested they would go with a firm that had a badge on it because of the reasons I've outlined. So that badge can be clicked on, and it will then take an individual through to a web page hosted by the SRA. We'll then talk a little bit more about what being regulated means, and it will also confirm to the user, to the member of the public, that they are on the genuine website of the regulated firm. So if you want to use the badge now, there's a couple of things that you probably need to think about doing. Firstly, in order for the badge to work, we need an accurate and valid website address from you. You can do that and can provide us with that information if you haven't already in your MySRA account, and there's information on our website about how to do that. If you're a firm with multiple website addresses or domain names or URLs, you can have a badge on various pages, but we need to have that information from you. And again, there's a form on our website that enables you to tell us what your multiple website addresses are. If you have done all that and you're ready, you can go to the link on the slide there, and you can access the code required to upload the badge to your website. And if you don't really want to use the badge now, you want to wait till spring and summer, obviously you don't have to do anything. As of this morning, I think there were 609 firms we regulate who'd already uploaded the badge. So I think they can see the advantages that using the badge brings. Again, support will be available. We understand some of this is quite technical in nature. That's why Yoshiki, our delivery partner, are on hand to provide live web chat, emails, FAQs to help you meet some of the technical problems that you might have. It's fairly easy to do. I've seen it kind of work and spoke to firms today, and they've said it takes 2 or 3 minutes to upload the code onto your website. And again, there's the ethics helpline for you. The digital register. It's the final part of our better information package. Now, we already publish information on our website, but it can be difficult to find, difficult for consumers to find, difficult for you guys to find. What the register will do, we'll bring all of that into one place so it's easy, accessible. You'll be able to search for a particular firm and find out find out regulatory information about them. Now, the purpose of that is really for someone to validate their choice. You can imagine they've gone onto a website, they've seen the price information, they've clicked on the badge, they've gone through. This is the final kind of check before they may go off and contact you to help them out with their legal problem. It's not a comparison tool in any way, shape or form. Okay, so that's a quick run through, quite high level and at speed of what we're doing. A lot of people have said to me, regulation isn't fun and can't be fun. I disagree. And I'm going to prove you wrong now because I'm going to invite you all to play my version, Richard's regulatory version of the hit BBC One show, Would I Lie to You? I'm now going to run through a series of statements. These are genuine statements, what people have asked us. So I'm going to ask you to show your hands whether you think that is myth or fact. Unfortunately, there's no prizes available. This is just for pure regulatory fun. So the first statement is, we want to dictate the prices that you charge. If you think that is a myth, put your hands up now. Okay, that's pretty much most of the room. If you think that's a fact, put your hands up. Okay, I don't think that's anyone. You are right, it's a myth. Congratulations, 1 point each. So we want you to use a fixed fee model. Hands up if you think that's a myth. Okay, hands up if you think that's a fact. It's a slight hand up there. That's a myth. You're a very well-informed group. Did you come to the session this morning? Price requirements apply to large firms. Hands up for myth. Less hands. Hand up for fact. It is indeed a fact. Obviously, if they're providing the services we've outlined on the slides today and they're publishing them to the public, all firms, irrespective of the services they deliver, must publish complaints information. Myth. Hands up for myth. Hands up for fact. Excellent, you've all been listening, well done. And we are forcing firms to get a website. Hands up for myth. Hands up for fact. It is indeed a myth. So hopefully that kind of dispels some of the questions or queries you might have or what you've been hearing. There's lots of information on our website, so please have a look at that. There's lots of FAQs and guidance which can help you kind of address some of these issues. I'll be around in the concourse after this session if you've got any detailed questions, but thank you.
Great, and thank you very much, Richard, for cantering through 2 years' work in just over 10 minutes there, I think. So really well done. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the panel. Those of you who've downloaded our app can see detailed biogs in that, but we have over here Abby Winkworth, who is a partner at IBB Solicitors, responsible for their business development. And Abby, you used to be at Deloitte, so quite a different type of business. We have Wanda Goldwag, probably known to many of you in the room, who chairs the Office for Legal Complaints, which is the board of the Legal Ombudsman, also based here in Birmingham. And Wanda's background is very much in marketing in large international global businesses. And Russell Conway here is the senior partner at Oliver Fisher Solicitors, based in Kensington, if I have that right, Oliver. And Oliver corrected me earlier because I think I said you had 3 decades working in property matters, but it's actually 42 years. Is that right?
Nearing retirement, I hope.
And Russell also does quite a bit of broadcasting on those areas. So before I turn to you all for the questions, which as a well-informed audience, I'm sure you've all been honing sharply, I'm just going to ask our panel for their observations on what opportunities they think this approach to transparency is going to bring for both firms and consumers. And I'm going to go to Wanda first.
So, I'm going to talk about this as a consumer because I'm sitting here between 2 solicitors firms. So I just don't think, as a consumer, we would ever go ahead and buy something without having a good idea of the price. I had the opportunity to talk to Neil Rose, a great journalist from Legal Futures, at lunchtime. And I said to him, Neil, let's go to Paris together. And there was a sort of ripple. And what I was trying to say was, someone makes you an offer, you want to know the details, don't you? And you want to know the price of something. Actually, if Neil and I chose to go to Paris, there are lots of ways we could go. We could drive and take a ferry. We could go by plane. We could go by Eurostar. We could go by boat. And all of those things cost a great deal more. We could stay in a tent. We could go to a hotel. And all of that would change the price. So going to Paris could cost a couple of £100, or it could cost £20,000 if we really went for it. And I don't think as consumers we ever buy things without having a good sense of price. And it's not just about things of that sort. It's about things that we are and know are complex. Buying a car. I know quite a lot about how people choose cars. It is true, by the way, that men ask what the engine size is and women ask what the colour range is. It's absolutely true. But if you're buying a complex car, if you're buying something like a Mercedes, you know what the base price is, and then you have a conversation with the salesperson about whether you desperately need heated seats or those little mirror things that wiggle. You wouldn't ever go into a car showroom and go, that Mercedes, please. You always have a conversation of price. And that is what I think is happening here. And I think it's no different whether you're buying a product, a physical product like a car, or a service like a trip to Paris, or anything else. People want to have a sense of what the base price might be and what the ancillaries and modifications are going to be. And I'm sure we'll talk later about how complex that is. But in essence, if you don't tell people the price, they will imagine what it is. And I think one of the real issues, and people have mentioned this to me, but it's really, really true. People assume solicitors are going to be tens of thousands of pounds. They think you are unbelievably expensive. And that's not always the case. And so in not telling your price, you're allowing people to imagine what it would be.
Thank you very much, Wanda. And I think Wanda's reflecting there that we are all consumers. Everyone in this room is consumers, and actually we're pretty sophisticated consumers too. So thank you. And Abby, from a firm perspective.
So before I was in law firm management, I was a consumer and purchaser of legal services on behalf of myself as an individual and on behalf of my organisation for many years. Not just legal services, professional and business services of all types and descriptions. And I bought them on the basis of whether I thought they could do the job, whether I wanted them to do the job, whether I wanted to work with them, and whether I felt they really wanted to work with me. Much of what I was looking for was peace of mind, value, quality, and ultimately a relationship, whether I thought that their interests and requirements aligned with mine, whether they really would put me at the front of what they were going to do. And nothing has changed since I've moved into law firms. I purchase other suppliers in that way, and also that's how I think other people purchase our law services. And I think what's very interesting about the pricing transparency, as we've been talking about it here, is it's not just about price. A lot of this is about value and quality. When you look at the SRA guidance, they're looking to for you to set out what you are going to provide, who is going to provide it. That's value. And quality, working with solicitors' review sites, for instance, to show what the quality is. And price is part of that triumvirate upon which people make decisions. But ultimately, you're giving them information which will make them feel warmer, calmer, more capable, more educated, more knowledgeable. You're making yourself more accessible so that people are able to come and have a conversation with you and build a relationship with you. And certainly our pricing on our website is designed to encourage people to then come and have a conversation. So from a law firm management side of things, I may be a marketer, but part of being a marketer is about managing risk and making sure I never put my firm in any sense of risk whilst I do my job, branding, marketing and business development. And what transparent pricing does for us is it means that people are forewarned, that they know how much it's going to cost broadly, and that helps to reduce the number of complaints at the end of the process. So for all of those reasons, I think the benefits of putting pricing onto our website far exceed any immediate discomfort that we might feel about actually staring over the edge of the precipice and then diving in.
Thanks very much, Abby, and a strong message there around value add, I think, for consumers and for firms. Russell, I'm conscious you're not coming to this new.
Well, let's have some more audience participation. How many of you have put your prices up on your website as of today? Hands up. Now, this is the brave bit. How many of you haven't put your prices up on your website as of today? Well done for being so courageous as to admit it. 20 years ago, A, I had hair, and B, we had nice legal aid forms. Do you remember those green forms, blue forms, and there was a purple form? These days we don't have any of that, we have a digital CCMS. But 20 years ago, I put up my first website at Oliver Fisher, and we had a huge debate because my idea was to put all our prices on that website. It seemed quite natural. We were putting up our pictures, we were putting up the types of work we were doing, and I thought it was a very good idea to have the prices. And we put a huge grid of prices up. My partner said, "You're mad, Russell. You'll go out of business in 6 months because all our competitors will undercut our prices and everybody will go to them." But interestingly enough, I work in Kensington. And back in those days, I think there were 32 firms in Kensington. And now there are only, I believe, 3, and I'm one of them. So the harbingers of doom were wrong. The clients were right. They liked the fact that if they wanted to do a simple divorce, they knew exactly how much it was going to cost down to the penny. If they wanted a simple purchase, they had a calculator, they knew how much it was going to cost. And that was something the clients loved. And I was at an exhibition, a landlord exhibition at Olympia last week, and I had a little stall giving out pens and teddy bears and all the things that landlords like. And every single person that came to my stall said, "Look, you've got great teddy bears and you've got great pens, but how much is a possession action going to cost me?" And without fail, they wanted to know how much the transaction was going to cost. And that was important to them, and jolly well rightly, because they didn't know whether it was going to cost 1,000 or 10,000. And in some cases, they were extremely pleased to hear the price that I quoted them. A lot of clients aren't that concerned to buy the cheapest. When I laid my front drive a few years ago, one chap quoted me 500 quid to do it, another quoted me 2,000 quid to do it, and somebody else quoted me 20,000 quid to do it. I didn't go to the chap offering it at 500 quid because that would have been insane. I'm not quite sure what he'd have done. I still sometimes speculate about that. But I went to the chap who was doing it at 2,000, and he made a really good job. It's still there, and he's doing all the drives in the local area because everyone realised he's really good at it. He charges a reasonable price. But we knew the price in advance. And as far as I'm concerned, this isn't anything new. My firm's been doing it for 20 years. We've always put our prices up online. Clients appreciate it. And hopefully, when I've retired, my successors will continue the firm in that guise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Russell. Thank you. So it's an opportunity for you all to express your views, ask any questions that you might like. We've got Benita and Seema, I think I have that right, to help with their paddles and microphones. I don't know if we still have Emma and Lakshmi at the back there, but they'll get to you as quickly as you can if you'd like to put your hand up. Any questions for our expert panel or for Richard, our expert better information person? Anyone got any burning points that you'd like to make?
Hello, I'm Rachel Conn. I watch very little telly. Could you please tell me what publicity or advertising the SRA or Law Society has carried out to tell the public about our need to publish prices and about the digital badge?
Okay, thank you very much. So a question around promoting the digital badge and encouraging people to look at your websites to find the kind of pricing. So I'm going to start with Richard.
I think it's a really good question. Obviously, we want as many consumers to understand and recognise the badge and understand pricing and what it stands for in terms of the quality, and the protections that you bring. We've already started engagement work way in advance of launch on the 6th. We're working with consumer representative bodies to help them understand what they could be telling their clients, for example, the Citizens Advice Bureau, about expectations and what this means. That will be ongoing. We'll also develop kind of a range of other material which will help kind of generally people understand what the badge stands for and what to expect from a law firm in terms of pricing and service description. So, yeah, we recognise it's a really important part of making this work, and we're doing work around that.
And perhaps I could just add that the digital badge is voluntary, of course, at the moment. So as that moves over into something that we're really expecting all law firms to do, we'll certainly be out there telling the public what that means, the information that they can gather for that. And one of the channels that we often use for this type of thing is a website called Legal Choices, which many of you may have already linked your firms to, which is a joint regulator source of really objective, simple information for members of the public who want to try and navigate their way through a legal landscape that to many people is incredibly scary, actually challenging, difficult to find their way through. So that's one of the routes that we want to use to make sure people understand how they can look at telling the difference between a regulated and unregulated law firm, for example. But we're certainly very keen to work with colleagues at the Law Society to help to promote this as well. And we're confident that a lot of law firms will also be promoting that information and their use of the digital badge. Don't know if anyone on our expert panel would like to jump in on promoting these new sources of information.
Well, I think it's very interesting. If you were to go into Google and say, sell my house cost, actually what you will find is what I think some of you call conveyancing factories tell you the answer to that question. Now, you know and I know that what they also do is that when you ring up and say, you know, I've got a 25-bedroom house with a river running through the garden, they go, sorry, we're not going to do you. But they give a sense of price to people. And we don't usually, as members of the public, sell houses very often. We might sell a house 2 or 3 times in our lifetime. So again, it's reassuring to know that the price is this. And so what I would say is, if you don't put your prices up, people can only assume that you are more expensive than the conveyancing factories and the probate factories and the other factories that are coming up along. So for me, it's not so much what the SRA should do, though I do believe they should be doing a great deal, just to be clear. It's also, in every walk of life now, it's a reality that most people go onto a website first to start the research. I mean, I work in many, many sectors, and there is no exception to that rule, whether it's what sort of clothes I'm going to wear at Christmas, whether it's car buying, all of those areas. People now do quite a lot of research up front. And if the only answers they get on conveyancing are other people's firms, that's who they're going to be comparing. They won't compare you because they don't have the basic information they want. Do I understand that there's a great deal more information than simply price? Of course I do. And so should you. But you need to get yourself into the short list of people they're comparing to have a chance.
Russell, what did you do as a firm to promote your publication of your pricing offer?
Well, one thing we need to emphasise here is that most people, when they're looking at your website, aren't looking at it on a desktop. They're looking at it on a phone. Yes. So you've got to remember that even though your IT people may put up a really good website on your desktop, you've got to ensure that it looks great on an iPhone, because most people out there doing these checks and seeing what you're charging, seeing who's going to be doing it, looking at your firm, will be looking at it on a phone. And I think the research shows that most people, and I think it's 70% of people, are doing it on iPhones and the like. So I suppose the tip I would give is make sure your IT people make sure this information is easily available on an iPhone. Now, that's not as easy as it sounds, because there's quite a lot of information there, and you've got to make it look attractive. We've done that, and any of you in the audience can have a look at what we've done. We're trying to make it better, because we certainly don't think that putting pricing information and quality information up is a job that you just do. It's continuing. You have to do it all the time, and we spend quite a lot of time on it. But getting it right on a mobile device, which is quite small, is a challenge. But your clients will thank you for it if you do it well.
Thanks very much, and great advice there, and I think that's absolutely right. It's mobile devices is clearly the way forward, and we have to design mobile first into everything we do, I think. Other questions, observations? Hand up over here. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lisa Farrow from Farrow Law. I'm a sole practitioner, and I'm also a director of a smallish legal practice down in Dorset. Over the lunch, I've been making some inquiries about how I can promote the digital logo, digital mark, both as a sole practitioner without a website, but also within my other practice. From the inquiries that I've made, I can only use the digital logo, digital mark, on a website. I can't use it on business cards or even on the letterhead. And the Law Society has a similar sort of quality mark, which is the conveyancing quality mark and other ones, that they can use on their letterheads. Is there any move to change that?
So good question, and perhaps I can start and then Richard can fill in. So at the moment you can, of course, very clearly on any hard copy material such as a business card say that you're regulated by the SRA. The real value in the digital badge, and it is a digital badge, is that you can actually click through it, and for a member of the public or an SME you can actually see what that means in terms of the protections and so on that using a regulated firm offers. So it is designed to be used on your iPhone or elsewhere so that people can just tap and get that extra information. Richard, I don't know if you'd like to.
I think the only point I'd make to add to that would really, a lot of what I've talked about today are really about minimum requirements. We're kind of set, the basics really in terms of price and service information. And you mentioned other particular kind of logos, quality marks. There's no reason why you shouldn't be having those on your website anyway, because I think it links into a lot of what the other panelists have said about kind of demonstrating your quality and value. So, strongly advise you to get, to use those on your website.
Everyone's happy. And any further questions? Other hands up over here. Thank you. Hello there, that looks like Linda.
It's me again.
Hi there, Linda.
I couldn't resist it. I suppose what makes me cross about the digital badge is we're being told this is a really good thing for solicitors, but the truth is that people know what solicitors are and know what they stand for. They've even learned what regulated by the SRA means. And we are now having the position of having to have the digital badge because there's going to be a new type of solicitor entity introduced that is an unregulated firm which will not offer insurance cover to clients, will not offer the compensation fund to clients. And so there's got to be a way that the public know that they're using a solicitor but getting something less than they have grown to expect. And because of that, we're going to have to use this badge, and I don't know what the development costs have been, but what I see next around the corner when you talk about promoting the badge is that we, in our practicing certificates, will have to pay to promote this to the public, so the public understand that when they use a solicitor, they're not getting what they normally expect. And so I don't see this as a good news story for solicitors. I see this as an expense because of some new regulatory concept that I'm not sure does anything for solicitors. And I honestly do not believe does anything for the public when they are going to probably not click through the badge, probably not understand it, and end up facing no protection in a new environment where they're using a solicitor.
And thank you very much for that. And we do, of course, understand the caution that people have because we're changing the opportunities for solicitors to work in different ways. The original concept for the digital badge is very much something that firms asked us for. And when we went out and tested it with the public, as Richard has mentioned, 3/4 of the people we spoke to said that they would find it really genuinely helpful. And that's why we're bringing it into the marketplace, to make it as straightforward as for people to navigate their way through the legal system. We live in such an information-rich world. What we are increasingly being asked for is how to make it simple for people. And certainly what we're hearing is that bringing through a digital badge is an opportunity to make it really simple for people so that they can get a clear understanding of exactly what they're buying. And that's why we're doing it. Richard, I don't know whether you'd like to add anything to that from your work directly with members of the public and indeed law firms.
I think the point I'd like to make is, I don't think the badge and the effectiveness of the badge really depends on a full and frank understanding of the Solicitors Regulation Authority. And we know that because we've gone out and tested this, lots of badge designs with lots of members of the public. What they're interested in is really the word regulated. And what they associate with that is high quality, protections, and actually just a sense of if something goes really badly wrong with what I'm about to the solicitor I'm about to use, there is someone there that I can go to raise those concerns. So I think we do have to try and help people understand what the SRA does, but I don't think it's absolutely critical to the kind of success and consumer understanding of the badge.
Other people on the panel have a view around how people access information to help them understand what it is they're buying?
I think what's quite interesting with the package, and it is a pricing transparency package that the SRA have put together, is it does deal with a number of different issues, and taking each one in isolation, I agree. I mean, if you were to just put pricing on the website, I wouldn't be very happy about it. Putting qualification information on the website that goes alongside that, and a badge which will become recognised and becomes part of our proposition. These are all, and solicitors' review sites as well, which I think is, I think it's absolutely brilliant that we're being asked to engage with that as well. All of these provide peace of mind, making us more accessible, making us a bit less scary. You frankly don't look that scary to me, it has to be said, but I think that the law can be seen as unapproachable, it can be seen as inaccessible. People don't really kind of quite understand how they can differentiate between one lawyer and another. And the package of things together is going to help to do that, even if you personally may think that one area has more importance or more weight or is more impressive than another.
I was conscious of quite a few people clapping then, a little ripple, because I thought people were thinking, yes, she said it. That's what I think too. So I'd like to say something, which is that I think the real issue in this country at the moment is that many, many people can't access legal support at all. And actually, I think that is a real concern as a citizen. I think the idea that people who are running away from husbands, who try to keep children, people who are in very vulnerable situations cannot access lawyers is extraordinarily worrying to me, because my experience of situations where there isn't a way of getting to things is that cowboys arrive and cowboys take advantage of the vulnerable. So I think the world is changing. I think that if we don't modernise who a solicitor is, then the people who will be mostly getting legal advice will be getting legal advice sometimes from brilliant people, people who are Silex members, people who are paralegals, but they will also be going to people who really are absolute sharks. And I think particularly in the immigration area, I happen to be associated with a couple of things where really dreadful things have happened to people who were under the misapprehension they were dealing with lawyers and were not actually. They were dealing with people who were simply exploiting them. So I know this thing about solicitors working in unregulated business is controversial, and it's not for me to say whether that's a good or a bad thing. But I can tell you that the marketplace always fills vacuums. And if people who are legally qualified aren't there to give advice in all sorts of entities, other people will put their hands up and say, I'll do it, and they may not be very good policy people.
Thank you, Wanda. I think that's absolutely right. And as you heard earlier on, we're very keen to make sure that solicitors can work in lots of different ways. And in part that is, as Richard was saying earlier, with 25% of the legal market is already the so-called unregulated businesses. Adding solicitors into that can only improve the quality of the service that people receive. Russell, do you have a view on this and the differentiation?
I like badges. When I was a young solicitor, I represented a landlord who was on a manslaughter charge because he'd helpfully put a new boiler into one of the flats he managed, and he succeeded in killing 2 tenants because the person who'd put the boiler in wasn't an appropriate plumber. In those days, long time ago, there was no corgi or gas-safe badge. Anyone could be a plumber. I could have been a plumber. And that landlord served some years in prison. These days, none of us in this room, I suspect, would dream of putting a new boiler in unless you had checked that your plumber had a gas-safe badge and was regulated by that industry regulator. And I think it's exactly the same for solicitors.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Other questions? We have just under 5 minutes left. If people have got pressing points at the front here, 2 hands up.
Hi. I'm glad you raised a point about immigration and the lack of access for potential clients. And I'm failing to understand how this badge is going to help, particularly immigrants and those vulnerable in our society, because they are the people that don't have access to the internet, the services that are required to differentiate between genuine solicitors who are there to help them and rogue traders who will take advantage of these published prices, undercut genuine solicitors, and then take these people into their fold and provide the terrible services that you mentioned. So how does that help the most vulnerable, and what's being done to address that?
Thank you. Wanda, as you raised this one, do you want to dive in? Do you have anything to add to your previous
So I think actually one of the issues is they don't undercut. They often overcharge dreadfully for very minor things like filling in a form. If you are an unbelievably scared immigrant to this country, you know, perhaps coming from a war-torn area, you have a kind of sense of England as a liberal country, and then you arrive here and you're asked to fill in forms, and the terror that you might get that form wrong is unbelievably great. And one of the things that worries me is that you then go to someone who has literally no more skill in that area than I do, and it mishandles it. What the SRA are doing about that, I don't know, so perhaps you could answer that question.
I think it's a really good point. I think, you know, we've been conscious that, you know, to help kind of ensure that consumers in the whole spectrum are kind of from those that are sophisticated to the most vulnerable. You know, we need to work with other partners, other stakeholders, other agencies to help upskill them and help them understand what the badge means, what pricing, service information means, because, you know, more likely than not, the very vulnerable are likely to go to places, for example, like the Citizens Advice. So by us working with them and making sure they understand it and giving them the support they need, we can actually reach them more directly than perhaps we would have done, you know, just by the SRA using our traditional media channels. So that work is happening.
I mean, obviously, the elephant in the room here is the decimation of legal aid over the last 10 years. And legal aid has been decimated. And because of that, people aren't able to get free advice, which they deserve. And perhaps that's something that our colleagues at the SRA will chat to their friends at the Legal Aid Agency and the Ministry of Justice. It's a tragedy that this country has allowed the best legal aid system in the whole world to be reduced to one of the worst.
Thank you, Russell. And I'm sure that's an area that colleagues from the Law Society who are here would also be very happy to discuss with people. We've got time for one more really quick question. I know there's a hand up in the front row. I should say our expert, I think, Wanda, you have to head off, but I'm hoping that Abby and Russell and Richard will be around for the rest of the day, so don't hesitate to catch them. Question from the front.
Thank you very much. I want to pick up on what some of the other questioners have raised, because I feel that there are more details that are worth asking. I'd like to just very quickly say I'm actually a big fan of both transparency and the digital badge in terms of price transparency. In fact, generally, I've had all of those things on my website insofar as I could from day one. But the devil is in the detail, And the extent to which this will work and will help the public and will help us as practitioners depends on how effectively it's implemented. On the transparency, on the price transparency side, you've mentioned that you will react to complaints and you will look to see if we have fallen down in terms of fulfilling the requirements. My question, perhaps even challenge to you, is when we call up and ask you to look at our own websites and tell us whether you think we have fulfilled your requirements without a complaint, are you prepared to respond positively to us and help us to be sure that we have fulfilled your requirements? Because I think a lot of practitioners feel that you're only there when we fall down and not when we're seeking to stand up. Thank you.
Thank you.
So very, very quickly, thank you. On the badge, I think, the very first questioner started by mentioning television. And, I think your response on, how you're going to promote this, frankly, was a bit weak, because I think, that it's only going to work, thank you, if it's promoted very strongly. And, even these days, television is an important medium. Yes, it's an expensive medium, but it works, and this is a very important thing in our society. So I think you need to do that. And I didn't understand why on earth a practitioner without a website would be barred from using the badge on letterhead and so on. I know it's primarily a digital badge, but it should be promoted as widely as possible, and that means letterhead and all that sort of thing.
Thank you, thank you. So I think on the television point, I think we might have to square that off with others who feel that this isn't something that we should be spending money on. I think I'm sure we all collectively need to do more on the promotion component. Perhaps colleagues would like to comment on some of the other areas you've mentioned, Abby.
So just quickly on the promoting site, we are actively promoting our pricing transparency as part of the value of using IBB solicitors. So we're telling people about it through our social media. I suggest you do the same, because if it's only me who's doing it, then they're going to be coming to my site rather than your site. It is how you implement it, you're absolutely right. And implementing it means embracing it and using it for your benefit and spending your time and your money publishing it. Because I agree, I don't particularly want the SRA to be spending any more of my money publishing it, when actually it's out there now, we can all publish it and promote it for ourselves. And television is very expensive. Doesn't reach as many people as we would hope these days. Some of the other things you talked about.
I think just picking your point on support and us kind of casting an eye over websites, we're doing that already. We've been doing that since the 6th of December. In fact, we've been doing that a lot before. Firms do contact us, they email us, they come through to the ethics helpline, just say, can you just take 5 minutes to look over this? And we're quite happy to do that. The guidance is there, to try and kind of prevent that in a way. The guidance covers lots of the top questions we're being asked. So that's your starting point, really. If then you feel you want, to have a chat with us, please do so. The ethics helpline are there. They can take a look at what you're suggesting or how you might want to apply some of the rules and give you an answer. So, we'd encourage you to make use of the support that's available.
I think I'd just like to add to that. I think that the guidance the SRA has given has been very good, and some of the teams in my firm have chosen to just use the SRA template. And some of them have chosen to be a little bit more thoughtful and to put themselves into the minds of the clients and think about what information they do want. So particularly if you have got a purchase which is quite emotionally engaging, then you want a lot more knowledge and information. So we're putting a lot more knowledge and information into those aspects of the website. This is just the start. We can change as we go on. We can evolve. This pricing will evolve. There is no real right. If you've got that platform and you're using the SRA guidance and that's all you want to do right now, then that's fine. But over time, we will all teach each other. And for those of you who do have marketers in your firms, this is their job. This is what they should be advising you on. The psychology of purchasing and how to get your pricing right is their job. And so if they haven't got that information, go out and ask them to go and get it.
So thank you very much to Abby, and I think that is us right out of time. In 10 minutes' time, we've got everybody coming back into this room for our session on anti-money laundering. So huge thank you to our expert panel and to all of you who've asked such great questions. Thank you.